What is up, ladies and gentlemen, and speedsters all round, to my breakdown of Season 6, Episode 18 of The Flash, otherwise known as well as the penultimate episode of Season 6, Pay the Piper. Now, this trailer consists of Godspeed returning and a few other things as well, but also in this video towards the end, and trust me, you guys are going to want to stay for it because I definitely need your input as well. I'm going to go over a theory about how I think with the original finale, maybe Reverse Flash entwined with potentially Red Death was going to be set up, but you know, this all plays into the theory I have, so stick around for that because yeah, who knows, there was meant to be a big cliffhanger with the Reverse Flash for the original ending of Season 6, which we're now not getting due to the illness, which I'm sure you can all understand. The production stopped, but that doesn't mean that this still won't be set up at the beginning of Season 7, because you have to assume, at least for now, sure there might be some tweaking left, right and center as for the existing storyline for episode 20, 21 and 22 for next season, but otherwise, you know, they may indeed continue those original scripts for those episodes for Season 7, Episode 1, 2, and 3. We're just gonna have to wait and see. But enough discussion for that, I'll save that towards the end of this video, but let's play the trailer for Episode 18. Very quick, but teases a lot of fun and exciting things for next episode. I really hope it delivers, but if in case you haven't seen it, I'm gonna play it now. If you have, enjoy it again, and we'll get into it.
There's a new speedster. He's a threat to the whole city. I have to face him. You don't have a lot of speed. I have to try. Sounds violent. I'm in. Mary!
So yeah, that was a cool trailer, very quick as usual. It actually highlighted quite a bit of Godspeed, and funnily enough, you know, despite the title of this episode being Paid the Piper, there was no Hartley Rathaway Pied Piper. But either way, let's read out the synopsis just to get a little bit more of a clue as to, you know, what's going on in this episode. Also, there are promo photos for this episode as well, which I'll be somewhat featuring throughout this video, I'm sure. Maybe we'll discuss a little bit of what's going on with them in relation to what's actually happening in the episode. But as for the synopsis, it is as follows. Godspeed and Pied Piper return. So when Godspeed returns, Barry turns to Hartley Rathaway for help. However, things get tense quickly after Barry realizes one of the changes from Crisis is that the Flash and Pied Piper are now enemies. Meanwhile, Iris tries to escape the Mirrorverse. So where do I begin with this? Because there's actually quite a lot of things I can speak about despite it being such a short trailer, because there's lots of avenues of speculation to get into even before I get onto my whole theory about the somewhat end of this season's original Reverse Flash big cliffhanger. But either way, I want to address the beginning of this season's episode, which was of course episode 1, where we had quite a few Godspeed clones being caught from Barry Allen over the summer, and once again in episode 1 he caught yet another one who was put in the pipeline. There was absolutely no reference to that ever since then, really, until now. Godspeed is returning all the way later in episode 18. Now, just because Crisis on Infinite Earths has happened, I would still like to think that they didn't just write that episode with those Godspeed clones over the summer for it to just be completely retconned and, you know, written over or just kind of abandoned from Crisis. So I have to believe that those clones in episode 1 of Flash season 6 of Godspeed are still consistent with the current, you know, new multiverse timeline or whatever you want to call it, and whether they're related to Blackhole or not, or just somebody sending these weird ass Godspeed clones back in time, screeching those strange ass sounds to Barry as he captures them. Bottom line, I don't think that would have changed. But what I will say is that I'm guessing, at least for now, the Godspeed that we see in this episode isn't just another clone of Barry's who he's been up against many of them, you know, before, as we just discussed. I mean, it could be, and that would still be a bit of a problem for Barry since this is still a speedster just like the previous ones he's caught of Godspeed, and he doesn't really have much of his speed left. So that would still be problematic and believable, but I would like to think that this is the iteration, the OG clone or the OG person of Godspeed in this post-Crisis run, or whoever has been sending them back or whatever. This is when we hear Barry say in the trailer, I need to face him, and Cisco's like, but you don't have a lot of speed. This is all very true. It's going to be very interesting to see how Barry, you know, tackles the problem of Godspeed. However, I do think that it will be assisted through Hartley Rathaway's Pied Piper powers. You know, just I think his powers will help neutralize Godspeed. Also, Hartley Rathaway could come in handy in another area, which we'll get onto in just a second. But we also see Godspeed in Star Labs. Now, this does make me think a few things. Now, Godspeed could be doing the typical Godspeed Godspeed thing that we've seen him do before in the show, perhaps trying to acquire stuff like Velocity X or whatever to try and enhance his speed or maintain it. I'm hoping it's a bit more interesting than that, but ultimately, I really wouldn't be surprised, especially as Barry does have some stashed away that he was even using a couple of episodes back, if you guys remember. And also, considering that Barry can't really use much of his speed because he only has a few droplets left, it wouldn't surprise me if Godspeed can get in there, and as we see in the trailer, he gets out with ease. But with Godspeed as well, I've seen quite a few people speculate about the fact that he may help trigger the artificial speed force, because if you guys remember from the beginning of the most recent episode of The Flash, they all try to trigger that artificial Big Bang speed force thing that will hopefully generate the new artificial speed force, but they failed, and Cisco was kind of a bit frustrated because Eobard Thawne in the future created a negative speed force all by himself without the assistance of anything else. So people are now thinking maybe Godspeed somehow helps, I don't know, give that a little bit of a kick to the point of where it could be successful. I mean, I guess that anything's possible, but I don't necessarily think so. I mean, who knows? Watch this space, I suppose. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but I'm not necessarily thinking that will happen. I'm more inclined to think that Hartley Rathaway, after maybe Barry and him make up in this episode, because they have done that previously in previous seasons, but because of Crisis, as the synopsis states, they aren't friends, they're actually now enemies. Because of, if you guys remember as well, when Hartley Rathaway, we saw him earlier this season, he said to Barry something along the lines of, "Not after what you did to me," or something like that. So Barry's got a bit of, making amends to do, but I'm sure they'll make up by the end of this episode. He'll help neutralize Godspeed, and maybe with his genius, because we can't forget that Hartley Rathaway once worked at Star Labs, maybe he can lend a hand to, fixing this artificial speed force generator. Now, talking about this whole artificial speed force generator, it's just on a side note here, I feel like a cool storyline for Godspeed this season would have been to go down the route of, the artificial speed force Big Bang creation generator thing, to inadvertently do a rebirth storyline of creating this Godspeed, and Barry also having the powers because of it. So for example, that could have actually even been the second half villain of this season, in how Barry creates new speed force. He gets connected to it, but as a result of that, it creates other speedsters, or just one, such as Godspeed in this episode, and then he has to worry about, I don't know, going after him, because Godspeed would be causing havoc around all of the city for some reason or another. I know that lacks a bit of depth, trust me, but I don't know, like when you've got an artificial speed force maker, which Barry's trying to establish a whole new literal speed force that he could be tied to, I think that's quite a good opportunity to have a little bit of other things go on there and create other speedsters, just like the lightning storm we had a few seasons back, similar to mirroring that of the rebirth story. But hey, I doubt that's gonna happen. I'm sure it's just gonna be Barry who's connected to this speed force, and either way, just some food for thought for a little alternative storyline for season 6 there. Now, in the synopsis, guys, it did state right at the end that meanwhile Iris tries to escape the Mirrorverse. Now, I really do hope that happens, and judging from what I'm looking at from these promo photos, I could be wrong here, but this looks like Iris is in Star Labs. These are the promo photos for Season 6, Episode 18, of course, and it looks like this could very well be happening. And I think it will. It's a safe bet. I think she's going to come back to Star Labs. In the original Season 6, before the illness took over the world, it makes sense that Iris's, Mirrorverse arc would be over. Her clone Mirrorverse Iris is over as of last episode. So, Episode 18, going into the final episodes of the season, she gets out, and unfortunately this is the penultimate episode, so we've only got her really in Star Labs probably towards the back end of this episode and next episode. And it also looks like from these promo photos, Ralph, I think that's Ralph laying in that little weird chamber. I have no idea what's happened to him. It looks like Cisco is trying to do something to him. Maybe it's significant to the Godspeed plot. Maybe something happened to him as a result of something that happened during this episode. But yeah, let me know your ideas down in the comments. Now, a few people did mention that I didn't speak too much about Caitlin in my review, and that is true because not much happened, but I do want to quickly say that I totally forgot about the fact that she wanted to go see her mum, so that is possible during this episode. And I do want to point out, if you guys remember, after the whole metahuman test that they did on her mother, it eventually was left off, I believe, confirming that she was a metahuman after the whole events of Icicle last season. So yeah, I guess if they do go to revisit Caitlin's mother, we do have to bear in mind that she is actually a metahuman now, and that could bleed into this whole storyline, I'm sure. But let's move on to the theory that I had, and that's to do with the original finale for this season. Now, just to reiterate very quickly again, if you aren't aware already, this is the penultimate episode. The Flash is ending the episode after this. This is because production was halted because of the whole situation with the illness in the world. It's, affected many movies, productions across the board. But if you didn't know this already, Grant Gustin actually dropped some really big bombshells to do with the original cliffhanger for this season, and that had to do with the Reverse Flash. Now, that got many people excited, including myself, because, I wasn't mega on board with the one-off special Reverse Flash episode that we got. I did say that if we were to get the Reverse Flash again, I would like to see him be set up for maybe the big bad for the final season. I don't feel like a villain of his caliber should be spent in a one-off episode, but luckily for that episode, right at the end, they did still leave him off to return again, with him, dispersing his negative tachyon energy into the atmosphere. It didn't dissipate, so he's still there, but I'm guessing trying to find a new host like Voldemort with his Horcruxes in some way or another. And Barry even said at the end of that episode, but by the time he comes back, we'll be ready for him. So, it really did set up for another return of the Reverse Flash, but I really didn't expect, especially after what Grant Gustin dropped with him being the cliffhanger of this season, for it to be that soon. So that, opened many ideas for many people. So if he's returning, does that mean he's found a new body? Does that mean that he's being played by a new person? Because I'm guessing that it wouldn't be a new Eobard body. I'm guessing it wouldn't be Matt Letcher. So yeah, that's intriguing to begin with. Furthermore, with him just being the cliffhanger of season 6, does that make him the villain for season 7, or at least season 7 part A? I mean, that's all up in the air as well. But the big thing with my theory here, and I'm not the only one who's conned on to this, because, I'm not saying this is true, this is just fun speculation. It does somewhat make some sense. It is quite a bit of a reach, but, just stay with me here, and you might see how some of this may be connected. It might not, but either way, in the latest episode of The Flash, I did point out in my review, and a lot of other people have pointed this out as well, that when Mirrorverse Iris collected the blood from Bloodworks, she put it on the mirror. That allowed Ava McCulloch to escape, but she tossed the vial aside, and there was still some of Bloodworks' blood left. Now, this perfectly tied to what Ramsey Rosso, or aka Bloodwork, was saying, and how he put himself back in his own cage, saying that, he knew he wasn't going to escape, but he's playing the long game. Well, that blood still being in that vial, a little bit left, definitely spells that out, that somehow, if Bloodworks' blood is out there in the world, that somehow this could take over a host. Maybe that could help Bloodwork escape. But now I'm kind of thinking, what if that blood somehow ties in to the finale, at least the original finale for The Flash season 6 episode 22 of this season, and we know, combined with the information of Reverse Flash, that he was meant to be this big cliffhanger. It kind of makes me want to combine the two. Now, first of all, I do want to, just put into everyone's heads that this, blood of Bloodworks still being in that vial, a little trinkle of it left out in the world, could have been a much longer game. It could have just been a little teaser to infer that Bloodworks' blood is still out there in the world, and it won't be retouched upon until a much later episode in season 7, for example, and that it has nothing to do with the Reverse Flash. But what if somehow, Reverse Flash is somehow trying to return, which, by the way, guys, we obviously know they actually had written, since he was the cliffhanger for season 6, which, Jesus, my mind's exploding with the possibilities here. I can't get into mega detail here because I haven't even got it mapped out fully myself, but what if that has something to do with Reverse Flash and the blood? What if somehow that does fuse and combine together to create Red Death? Now, I know Red Death has been put out of a lot of fans' minds because it seems that it was being set up. Maybe they were going for it, but maybe they pulled back and didn't really go for it anymore, because Captain Singh, just like with a lot of villains in previous seasons, they were teased in some shape or form, usually at some point in the season's episodes. Perfect example being when Abracadabra named the Flash's villains, and that, consisted of DeVoe. And then we had Captain Singh, or was it Chief Singh, in the Flash Museum saying, Red Death had killed so many people, and we all know Red Death is a speedster in the comics. However, I think we all guessed that they definitely, excuse me, I'm losing my voice here, wouldn't be doing the Bruce Wayne and Barry Allen Red Death but they could completely tread some new ground on traditionalist canon by establishing maybe blood work and Eobard Thawne returning, because we all know he's looking for some way of returning back. We know he does return back in the original finale cliffhanger for season 6. So stay with me here, but what if Ramsey Rousseau was gotta somehow escape Argus, and that could be possible for his blood infecting, you know, hosts in the city somehow, just like what we've seen with the beginning of this season. They somehow orchestrate his escape. Maybe Eobard Thawne hijacks the body with his, you know, weird Voldemort tachyon, negative tachyon energy, and then we get a proper kind of dark, twisted Flash with Bloodworks powers, but also Eobard Thawne's negative speed force. I guess that could be a way of, you know, the CW's Red Death, you know, with the blood of, you know, blood work and the negative Speed Force energy from Reverse Flash being fused together to create this new iteration of that character. Now, I know that may be unbelievable to some. That may even sound really cool to some. I'm not saying I've got all the details mapped out, but all I know is that the facts are there. We were meant to have a big cliffhanger. Now we know that there's some Bloodworks blood in the world that has the possibility to easily corrupt people. Maybe they might have combined the two together, which could have spelled out a really... I mean, even if this isn't true, just imagine Eobard Thawne's negative tachyon energy inhabiting Bloodwork. That really does kind of seem to me that could conjure up this demonic Red Death speedster villain. That even sounds pretty twisted. But that is the end of my theory. Either way, guys, I know it may not be 100% true, might not even be 40% true, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments down below. There's so much expanding that you guys can do. I read all of your comments, so yeah, just make sure you leave your thoughts on it. Even if you have a completely different theory, I would love to hear that as well, just because there is something to speculate upon with Bloodworks blood being out there in the world and just separately the Reverse Flash. But also don't forget, let me know your thoughts on the Godspeed episode. How do you think he will play into it? What do you think the end game is there? How do you think he even originated? Do you think it will help out with the artificial speed force, or do you think that will be Hartley Rathaway? There's so many different, you know, things we can talk about, but I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, it would really help me out if you left a like on it. I know it only takes 2 seconds of your time. I even forget to do it sometimes, but yeah, it only does take 2 seconds, so click that like button. Subscribe for more Flash videos like this and other things of a similar vein, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you speedsters in the next video. Goodbye.